Hugh Jackman ruined Wolverine by being too tall. While most modern actors breathe life into former CEOs characters, the X-Men franchise were dumbed down and washed away of any great character writing. Hugh Jackman being casted as Wolverine and forced into every fan's wishes by lusting after Jean Grey took away his depth, character arc, and respect for others. For some of you who don't read comics, you might be confused. So, let's start with a basic breakdown of who the Wolverine actually is. James Howlett was born to John and Elizabeth Howlett, wealthy family in Alberta, Canada, where he spent his time with his companion Rose and his half-brother dog, who was often a bully. After this horrific accident involving his mutation forming and the marital dispute involving his groundskeeper, their mom, their dad, he and Rose fled, where he adopted the name of the groundskeeper, Logan, as that was his mom's affair partner. Later on in life, he worked as a coal miner, where his companion saw a short stature, angry attitude, and tough exterior, nicknaming him Wolverine. Since then, he's been a soldier, a lover, and unfortunately, most often, a weapon. Wolverine is a character who has been changed, retconned, and expanded on over the years. However, this is the origin as it is. A man struggling with a troubled, forgotten past, being used, manipulated like a tool, fighting for his humanity against his animalistic instincts to become a better man. He fights figures like Sabretooth, who challenges manhood. He meets Cyclops, who challenges his confidence. And ultimately, he follows Professor X, who challenges his moral compass. So now we know that not only Wolverine is named for his short stature, but it adds to his character. His greatest foe, Sabretooth, is a representation of his shortcomings. Victor Creed is a 6'5" man who's faster, stronger, and has a more ruthless nature to him. Through Weapon X, he felt inferior to Creed, challenging masculinity. Creed's greatest issue with Logan was his moral compass, his passion to find his humanity when he wanted to do good. Creed didn't have that. He had no passion, no light in him, just a brutal man living in a brutal world. This is where Professor X comes into play, a privileged man who stayed privileged, able to learn about philosophy, politics, able to make a difference in the world, not through violence as a soldier, but as a teacher, as a revolutionary, as a father figure. Charles is almost a century younger than Logan, but acts like a lighthouse to him, a guardian, a father. Through his mentorship, Logan meets Cyclops, a man who found Xavier much earlier in his life, someone who's tall, handsome, and cool-headed. He has a semi-stable relationship with a beautiful girl who also shares similar problems to Logan. However, he's able to lead the X-Men well. He fights with skill, unlike Wolverine's brutish and animalistic style. This causes an envy of Wolverine. These are the tension points we as the audience appreciate in X-Men. They drive Wolverine to become the man he's been able to flourish in present-day comics. This is my Wolverine.
No. Wait. Wait.
After all my love for the X-Men has been said, I must say the movies are the biggest piece of dog shit I've ever seen. They offer an incredibly surface-level, moronic take on the most expansive and subversive comic book world that exists. If you're like a Superman fan or a Watchmen fan, you can relate to what I feel about Zack Snyder and what he's done to those franchises. For starters, the most common and obvious problem with the movies is their obvious disdain for the comics. Bryan Singer has stated himself he doesn't read the comics.
Just didn't read comics when I was growing up.
And only got into it for the movie, so you know he just read and skimmed through a few chapters to make convo with Marvel execs. There's all these lines digging at the comic counterpart to X-Men, and the greatest indicator of this disdain is his refusal to use the suits. The X-Men have the most beautiful and interesting comic book suits there is. He makes Mystique naked for no reason. You look at the comics and she looks dope there. You know who else looks dope? Nightcrawler being influenced by trapeze artists. Gambit being based on pool sharks. They're iconic, they're captivating, influential. My favorite personally is Jubilee. I mean, look at that drip. However, I can make a ranking video later. Let's look at what the great minds of America's favorite creep, Bryan Singer, came up with. God, this sucks. There's this famous interview where James Marsden correctly defines how their supersuits look and feel anything but super. I think Brian just wanted to see him in a gimp suit, to be honest with you, but that's another story for another day. Let's get back on topic. First, let's talk about casting. During an interview with the upcoming release of X-Men 1, Brian Little Boy Singer states,
African American to play Jean Grey or Cyclops or something like that. You have to be reasonably faithful.
basically saying he couldn't cast a black woman for Jean Grey as an example of being faithful to the characters. Which is funny, because Jean Grey being white has literally nothing to do with her character. I mean, I get it visually. With a white woman with red hair, I'd cast Famke Janssen myself, she's a great actor. But you know what I wouldn't do? Cast a man who is 6 feet plus as the Wolverine, one half of the Fastball special. What's funny is later in this interview he says,
Was the actor you lost?
An actor named Dougray Scott, a really wonderful actor who had a scheduling conflict, so I cast Hugh Jackman as Wolverine, who is a relative.
that Hugh Jackman was the runner-up. I'm thinking, great. Maybe they were faithful with original casting. Nope. Not one but two men who are 6 feet plus to play this guy.
I'm a little guy.
Now that we know how this movie was casted, let's get into the actual important bits of the film. My favorite films are usually written well, paced well, character, dialogue, plot, nice tempo, pretty good. You know, action, visuals, take a back seat, that's okay. In this movie, none of these things are done amazing. They're all done okay, but the writing and the characters...
It's the biggest piece of dog shit that I have ever...
Honestly, in the X-Men movie, it's a fluke, the first one, I would say. If you look how bad the other ones are, you can see how the writing really let it go down that road. And this especially becomes an issue in later films. How they characterize Cyclops and Jean Grey. In my honest opinion, Wolverine should never be a serious love interest for Jean Grey. Outside of the age gap, which is over 100 years old, narratively, it doesn't make sense. Both are troubled people mentally who've been manipulated, Jean by the Phoenix Force and Wolverine by Weapon X. Cyclops becomes a point of tension between them, Jean having him as her rock and healing from a traumatic mutation story, and Wolverine envying Cyclops for his tall stature, cool head, and leadership position. Cyclops in the comics is sometimes aloof, non-emotive, he has trouble expressing himself. Some fans think he's coded as autistic, and this is why he loves Jean though, a telepath who's able to peer into his mind and see his true self. This is also why the only other woman he has ever loved has been Emma Frost, another telepath. In this film, they really seem to hate Cyclops though, and they do not get him at all. He's constantly being picked on by Logan, who in some scenes looks even taller than him, and they write Logan stealing his girl, even though there's nothing that makes sense in her character to want him, other than the fans saying, yeah, let's put him with the hot redhead. Wolverine in these films should occupy a space similar to Rocket Raccoon in a sense, where he's constantly putting up a tough exterior, but he needs someone with a gentle touch to bring his humanity out of him. That gentle touch comes from Jean Grey at times, maybe, Kitty Pryde, like a little sister, or Charles Xavier. However, it should only be a friend. I think Jean should see Logan as a kindred spirit, someone who has also been through some shit and wants to help out. Not a love interest, especially since the dude is a century older than her. This is the problem with fan service and letting the masses decide the plot. This is how fandoms ruin things. Nerd! Punisher, Batman, Wolverine. What do these characters have in common? If you said they're all badasses, you'd be right, but I want to talk about their fandoms and how they suck the life out of a character. By now, we've all heard the complaints surrounding Batfleck. Yeah, that clip. It's such a clear misinterpretation of Batman that's intentional, but also bad. Like, if you're gonna change a character, make it a good change. My biggest issue, however, is now, because of people like Snyder, they think Batman is that. He's that bulky, cruel, tough guy. When he's not like that at all. My Batman is a cool-headed, kind, reserved detective.
I'm Batman.
Now because of cops, slapping the Punisher logo on their guns, they think Punisher is a Blue Lives Matter supporter, but no. Now, onto Wolverine. Because of Hugh Jackman ruining this character's perception, They all just think he's the ultimate badass. He's tall, he's sexy, he's jacked, he's cool, but he's not. He's an animal. That's why they call him the Wolverine. He becomes a better man eventually. It's like Quentin Tarantino talking about Django. Django doesn't come out the womb a badass. He has to, have a journey where he's a slave and then becomes the badass, Same thing with Wolverine. He needs to earn his place among the X-Men, among the leadership, among that family.
I'm about to end this man's whole career.
Wolverine being short is obviously part of a larger picture regarding comic accuracy. There's important subtext, character relationships, and an important arc with the man. However, I think him being short, not that great looking, and angry is important. In today's age, dudes have never been more insecure. The male beauty standard includes more than a ripped body and being 6 foot plus. There's also an aggressive nature of machismo that goes with it. Tough guys always putting up a front, no one wants to be soft or fruity. We all gotta act serious and hard as a soldier, even when we're in a private school. This is where being short matters. That Napoleon complex is a real trauma response from how the patriarchy affects men. Being angry for no reason, not no one in particular, like Bagel Boss, comes from years and years of people picking on you. Only when you're able to retaliate and act as violently and as brutal as possible do men finally stop giving you such a hard time. Only if you're a threat do you gain respect. This is why Wolverine being short matters. This is his story. He is somebody who's put in cage matches for being a mutant, somebody who was taunted at as a boy for sticking up for his female friends, somebody who felt inferior to supposed weapon ex-squad mates like Sabretooth just by being the runt of the pack. All this anger and aggression he learned in his life is how he became a weapon in the first place, a very real reality for young men in America being used with the military-industrial complex, only valued for their violence to inflict pain overseas, only through a more hopeful, gentle, thoughtful man like Charles Xavier does one begin to fight again for their humanity. He finds his new family in the X-Men, new friends in Nightcrawler, Jean Grey, and even eventually Cyclops. He chooses his humanity and only utilizes violence as a tool against evil, for the good of all. This lesson to young men is important, and no matter what you look like, how tall you are, how inferior you feel, as long as you fight for your humanity, your community, and your love, you will lead a fulfilled life. Thanks for watching, y'all. This is my first style of essay videos. I hope you enjoyed it, maybe you learned something. If you want to get more into comics, be sure to follow me and download the Marvel Unlimited app. If you want a classic recommendation on there, read the iconic 1982 Wolverine miniseries. It builds up to the 1988 Wolverine run. And if you want for a more modern, holistic view, you can read the X Lives and X Deaths of Wolverine. There are two series that tie into each other that just came out, and it is great. So, thank you guys again. Peace.